Mr. Buffett, this huge external aura around you comes with an internal sense of humility. What is it that keeps you humble?
My wife reminds me. No, I was lucky enough to be wired a certain way. I mean, if you're lucky, you're lucky. I mean, if I've been born with the right adenoids or something, maybe I could have been a great singer, but I wouldn't have deserved any credit for that either. There's a lot of luck in life, and I've had it. So I don't feel guilty about it in the least. But I do feel appreciative. I was born into a very fortunate country. I was male when, if I'd been female, I wouldn't have had the same opportunity. I was white when, if I'd been black, I wouldn't have had the same opportunity. I had, in particular, a father who gave me unconditional love, throughout my life. He didn't give me unconditional approval, and I gave him plenty of reasons to withhold unconditional approval. But I have done what I was sort of cut out to do, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work at something that I've loved all my life. I sold shirts for J.C. Penney when I was about 17, and I stood on my feet all day and tried to sell people a $3.98 shirt instead of a $2.98 shirt when they came in. That wasn't that much fun. So I have gotten to do things that are fun, and I should be appreciative, and I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm not enormously proud of it either. I mean, it's just the way it was the hand that life dealt me, and I got dealt a very good hand.
Talking about dealt, it seems the government these days is dealing with inflation by printing money. Now, this, of course, perhaps may look good, but in the long run, it's not sustainable. And you talked about devaluation of currency. Is that a serious threat?
There's certainly the potential for it. I mean, if you print enough money, you obviously devalue a currency, and if it is much easier for governments to print money than to raise taxes or to cut spending, and it's the job, of course, of politicians to resist that temptation. Sometimes it's called for, and certainly in the fall of 2008, whatever the government needed to do to restart an economy that was just about ready to come to a dead halt was justified. And I give great credit to the U.S. government as well as others, but particularly the U.S. government because I'm more familiar with it. They did things that only government could do. And one of the things that only government can do is print money. And there are consequences to that. The consequences are sometimes delayed for a considerable period of time. So that's why it's so pleasurable. I mean, you get to eat ice cream today and you only get fat tomorrow. And in this case, the time period can be longer. So it can be addictive. It can be seductive. It can be carried to the point where currency becomes debased at a very rapid rate. And I worry about that with any government. The natural tendency of governments over a period of time is to make their currencies worth less as a consequence of other actions that they take. And it is particularly cruel, as Keynes pointed out, because it in effect penalizes the people who believe in their government. I mean, they believe, in the currency. In the back of, if you look, I very seldom get on my wallet. You're watching an historic event here, but it says on the back of this, "In God we trust." And that isn't really true. The reality. If you have a government that only believes in God we trust, you're in trouble. It's really in the Federal Reserve we trust. They don't say that on that, but we are dependent on the actions of the U.S. Congress and the Federal Reserve to maintain the integrity of that piece of paper that I just pulled out, because you can't exchange it for anything else except more pieces of paper. if you go to the Federal Reserve Bank and you pull out a $20 bill and you say, I'd like to change this for something else, they say, would you like 2 10s or 4 5s? I mean, you don't get wheat or cotton or aluminum or anything of the sort. And so it's an enormous responsibility on the part of government to make sure that the integrity of paper money is maintained to a very high degree. And like I say, the tendency, unfortunately, is to go in other directions. We've had to follow policies which are stimulative, and stimulative can mean inflationary over time. We've had to follow those policies in the last few years, and I applauded them when they were initiated, but I also wrote a op-ed piece for the New York Times maybe a year and a half ago, said that the real test will be when we start withdrawing the medicine instead of administering it, and that will be the test. And that will be the test around the world for various governments. A currency is no better, essentially, than it's a reflection of the integrity of the government that issues it.